What's up, guys? It's Boondocks, and today I want to talk about probably one of the most underrated frames in the game, who's also my go-to when it comes to Steel Path survival. Now, she's partly underrated because her kit is a little weird the way it reads and the way it interacts. Additionally, her passive makes her operate different from any other frame in the game, and to be honest, it's a little bit clunky. So, I can honestly understand why people don't necessarily enjoy using her. However, as you can see, the amount of damage that you can put out using Zephyr, of course you do need certain weapons to make it work, but it's a bit ridiculous. Her second ability, Turbulence, makes it so that you can take essentially zero damage. As you can see, enemies are shooting me even as I stand still and I'm taking no damage. That's because the way Turbulence works, any weapon that doesn't cause an AoE splash next to you won't hurt you. Now, melee weapons will bypass Turbulence. However, you can't get meleeed when you're flying 20 feet in the air. So that alone makes it so that you're almost impervious to damage outside of certain cases of splash. So bombards can still get you if they're to shoot the rocks next to you, though the missile itself won't actually hurt. You can compensate for that splash damage by using a mod, which I'll get to a little bit later in the video. That being said, the rest of her kit is also very, very nice. For starters, she has access to tornadoes, which, as you can see, pull from a pretty ridiculous range, all things considered. Let's see if we can get the enemies to come up the stairs. They seem stuck. Let's kill those ones and get more to come up the stairs. They should get pulled from like right about this point over. But once they get pulled in, they just sit on top and you can just blow up entire groups at once. The crazy thing about that is this build's range is actually insanely short, but the enemies just get pulled in pretty decent. So you can use that to lock down entire areas if this was, say, a mobile defense mission, as opposed to survival. Her first ability is what we're using to actually float in the air, and that's called Tailwind. Tailwind has two components. One, it's the floating component. The other one is you can actually dash. It's sort of like a gauze effect where it's in the air. If you change your camera or try to use your directions, it doesn't do anything, and you're just going to keep launching until you come to a stop. It's a little bit tricky, and like if you're running straight, you'll just kind of like clip the floor pretty often. It's kind of clunky, and honestly, I thought it was better before the rework, but oh well. As far as her last ability, it's Air Surge, it's Air Burst. And honestly, that's the one that I typically replace whenever I'm going to be using her with a helmet ability, such as Roar, Ensnare, or Dispenser. An interesting thing about Dispenser is that you can deploy them in the air because they don't require your feet to be on the ground. What that means is, if you post it up right here, you could constantly be having energy orbs feeding you and extra ammo feeding you and never have to worry about anything. Just keep shooting in a general direction of enemies as they spawn in, just like I was. Personally, I'm using Ensnare right now, because once a Acolyte spawns, Ensnare just makes them that much easier to kill. Anyways, guys, I'm going to hop back to the ship to show off the builds that I actually have going, so I'll see you there. Well, guys, I'm not going to bury the lead. Let's get right into her abilities and what makes this work. And that, honestly, is her passive, which comes in two parts. The first one is the fact that she moves faster and falls slower while airborne, which I honestly think turns off a lot of players to playing Zephyr, because it completely alters the muscle memory you develop from running, jumping, and doing all your parkour moves. It's completely different on Zephyr, and that can be a bit annoying. There is a workaround to that, however. The second part is the major part. While airborne, whatever Zephyr's equipped weapon is, gains 150% crit chance that's additively stacked to the bonus of crit chance mods. So, what does that mean? If you normally have a weapon that has, let's say, a 200% crit chance from critical delay, Well, now it's going to be a 350% increased crit chance. Unfortunately, you can't necessarily see that on your card, but that's how I was getting some of those red crits in there and doing the massive amount of damage the way I was. Outside of that, her Tailwind ability, it's the floating one like I was talking about. It lets you stay in the air to get the most out of your passive, and that's why it's really good in survival, because you can lock down an area using Tailwind and your passive. Now, Turbulence gets modified thanks to the Jetstream mod, and this is what's going to give your weapons hit scan. So the Tsar no longer shoots out a lobbed projectile due to the 170% flight speed increase from the little bit of extra power strength we have on there. It's going to almost instantly hit the enemies every time you click. It just feels a lot better, and generally the gameplay is a lot smoother from it. Additionally, Jetstream will also give you a movement speed bonus whenever you have Turbulence on. While it's not like, Volt tiers or anything, it is always nice little quality of life side effect. The main thing here is that we're going to have that shield reflecting ability, where you're going to bend bullets around you and not take any damage, and that's a bit ridiculous when you think about it. The only other frame in the game that really gives you 100% damage reduction, outside of things like, Revenant and Rhino, is Gauze. But Gauze has to build up to having 100% damage reduction, while Zephyr gets it from the click of a button. As long as you avoid melee attacks, you take no damage, and that's a bit busted. Then, the Tornado, like I showed, had a pretty good range when it came to sucking in enemies and controlling a point. However, if you look, my radius is extremely low because I've spec'd out of power range. That doesn't matter because it actually takes that 8.5 from the edges of the tornado, not the center. So the 8.5 is really 8.5 on one side and then 8.5 on another with like 10 in between. It's kind of backwards. It's like 27 meters instead of 8.5. It's pretty interesting. Then the last one, like I said, I would drop Air Burst. It does synergize with Tailwind a little bit and Tornado a little bit, but honestly, putting in a Helmuth ability that's going to boost your power is way, way worth it. Let's talk about the Tsar weapon to begin with. Now, you can use other weapons like the Tonkor for some reason, or any explosive weapon for that matter, but the Tsar is just ridiculous with it. That's partly because it scales both crit and status. So mine is actually a 42% toxic. If you had radiation, it might even be better, because then you won't have to use both slots, because I'm already using both slots for viral, it'll give you another elemental damage type in here. As far as necessary mods are concerned, there's 5. For starters, you will need the Exilus adapter to put on the Vigilant supplies. This is absolutely necessary because you need to be converting your ammo into sniper ammo in order to have your Tsar always up and able to shoot. Then, Critical Delay synergizes very well with Zephyr's passive, making this absolutely broken. We're already doing Critical Strike Chance, which is now going to be 100% of the time, thanks to her passive plus Critical Delay. So, obviously, you're going to want Vital Senses and Hunter Munitions. The Hunter Munitions applies to the splash damage attack, the explosive portion, which is considerably stronger than just the base damage. And that's going to put massive bleeds on enemies, so even if they don't die from the initial explosion, the secondary or tertiary explosions will finish them off. And then finally, you're going to want to use Galvanized Chamber. This is a must just because, multi-shot you always want, and you're going to be able to get to max stacks almost instantly and then keep them up. Now, the rest of the mods are interchangeable depending on what you want. So if you had a toxic weapon like mine, you could always swap out, say, the Malignant Force with the Serration. Additionally, you might think swapping out Bane of the Grenier or Bane of XYZ might be better for Serration. But just because of the way that damage works in the game, the Bane of the Grineer is going to look at your total damage after it's done and then apply the 55% increase. Whereas the Serration is going to be front-loaded. And because it's front-loaded before the crit, the math works out in such a way that a lot of the times the Banes are superior to just the flat Serration if you can work your way around it. However, as you can see, I do have Primed Firestorm in here. And now this might not be necessary, and I just like it for quality of life. So feel free to put in a Serration there, or even a Galvanized Aptitude, because we will be applying a crap ton of stats. Lastly, you will want to try to get your hands on a Primary Merciless. The increased damage going all the way up to 360% is very helpful, but then that 30% reload speed also benefits considerably because Zar reloads one shot at a time. Having that 30%, you'll be able to stack them up and just spam, and it'll give an area that much easier. Plus you get the bonus 15 extra rounds, making it so that it's a lot harder to run out before you can just kind of swoop down and let your vigilant supplies kick in. Now my Zephyr build is going to look a bit scary at first, I'm not going to lie, but that's because I built her in a way that honestly you don't need to. I'm just going to kind of give the general outline. The reason I say it's scary is because I did use 2 Umbral mods on her. However, you do not need nearly this much power strength, because in all honesty, all that's really giving me is a little bit faster run and shot speed. Everything else doesn't really matter. You're getting that damage from the crits on your weapon, not from your abilities. So the power strength isn't even needed for Umbral Intensify. So if you wanted to, you could very easily just use a regular Vitality and anything else in here. You can even get away without a Vitality because Turbulence is generally going to keep you alive anyway. I just like that extra cushion in case there's any toxic damage. Aerodynamics is also going to help save your life in case you do get one of those splash damage attacks, get hit by a random melee that is somehow able to get to you, or any type of toxic damage. This will help keep you alive. Prime Sure-Footed is another quality of life, mostly due to the fact that we are using the Zar, and this will help prevent any of those weird staggers. Everything else is kind of straightforward. You want to build yourself for as much duration as possible, possibly even making room for Augur Message or Constitution if you saw fit. You really do not need to use a primed flow. A regular flow is fine, and just having a streamline. One mod that you might choose to get rid of would be Anchored Glide. This is what removes the floatiness to Zephyr and makes her run and feel like every other frame in the game, but you'll still get the bonus whenever you jump in the air of that 150 increased damage. So what that means is it's a little bit harder to stay in the air and constantly do damage, but heck, you can just jump all the time. Then we also have the other mod of Jetstream, which is going to give us that hit scan type effect as well as the increased movement speed. As far as your arcanes are concerned, there's a lot of different options you could do. I'm personally using Arcane Acceleration, just because I do like the increased fire rate, being able to dump all 5 rounds of the Zar. But other things, such as Arcane Avenger, if you have that complete, the increased crit chance would synergize very well. Things like that. Likewise, you could also drop Arcane Energize if you didn't feel like it. I just like being able to stay in the air permanently without any worry whatsoever. So that's why that's on there. But you can choose whatever you feel. So guys, in my opinion, Zephyr is highly underrated and undervalued. The amount of damage she can put out while being very protected is honestly sort of insane. Not to mention she has built-in crowd control, and you could, in a lot of ways, fit more range in here to make your tornado that much better of a crowd control ability. I just think the floaty nature of her has really detracted from her being considered good. That, coupled with the investment that's needed to make your weapon strong enough, to one-shot kill. The fact that she is available just from your dojo should push her over the top, but it doesn't. This build honestly reminds me of the Zephyr of old, the classic Tonkor Jetstream build, which felt amazing back when Tonkor was the best weapon in the game. And this kind of brought me back a little bit nostalgia, and I really enjoyed it. If you have the chance, give it a try and let me know how it works out, because I'm real curious to what people think of this one. Is it the most effective? Probably not, but it's a lot of fun and it is insanely powerful. Anyways, guys, until next time, good luck, have fun, peace.